Today, I want to go over the drafts from G2 versus Giant X, which took place today in the LEC season finals. And I think that this was a really important win for G2, along with good drafts, because after their defeat versus Mad Lions last week, I think a lot of people were starting to question G2 and whether or not they would be a valid world representative for Europe. And I think if they draft like today, I think they'd have a solid chance later on in the season finals, even though, again, it's against Giant X, a pretty weak opponent relatively. I think that it's still an important pickup in this series for G2. So they go ahead and first pick Ashe in game 1, which is very solid. I really like this champ, especially opposed to something like the Zeri that we've been seeing, or even the Ezreal as a first pick. I think Ashe just offers a lot of utility, and if you build her right, she does a crap ton of damage. Will Hans Sama build her right? Probably not. He'll probably do like Shiv, Triforce, something like that. Triforce is acceptable, but really you just want to go basic crit and hyperscaling Ashe like that with Kraken Slayer, Infinity Edge, Phantom Dancer, and items like this to just really scale her attack speed and crit damage to get the most value out of her as an ADC. Giant X go ahead and first rotate Maokai and Rel, which is really bad. Basically, they should have just countered ADC or gotten a good ADC matchups, taken the Ezreal, and then you can go ahead and blind pick jungle from there if you wanted to take the Maokai, which would be fine. Picking Rel here is just terrible, really easy to draft around for G2 as well, with the Braum lock in there on second rotation, but also Rel is just really bad. And Ashe is long range enough to where Rel is going to have a really hard time reaching her. Again, even with the Braum and the Ivern locked in, the Rel's going to have no value this game. So even if Giant X is trying to hard engage into G2, it's not going to work. You're trying to hard engage into Ashe, Ivern, Braum. Really solid peel, hyperscaling, disengage. So good draft so far from G2 through the first phase. I really like Ivern, obviously. I think this champ has been super underrated for a while, and I'm glad he's starting to get picked up a little bit more along with those AP farming junglers, because like I've said in previous videos, Ivern scales so well, but he also scales really fast because his items are so cheap. He builds Moonstone, he builds Redemption. Ideally you want Dawn Core third, maybe Ardent Censer third. And so since these items are so cheap, you spike really early on Ivern, and you can start contesting dragons much earlier than you would be typically with a scaling jungler like Zyra or Brand or something like that. Also, the Braum is just fantastic. Ashe Braum as a lane duo is really strong. You pretty much win lane at every phase. Early, level 1, level 3, level 6, you're going to have the advantage just because of the utility offered. Braum passive, a combination with Ashe slow is really strong. Your level 6 is strong. Obviously, Braum shield is absurdly powerful. It just counters the Rel really hard, and even with the Ezreal lock-in on R4 for GX, Ezreal's not going to be doing anything against Braum, quite frankly, and also with the Ivern shields coming in as well. I think that Giant X's ADCs are going to have a really hard time this game, because Ezreal gets countered by Braum and Ivern, and Zeri is too short range to be able to hit the Ashe consistently. So huge draft dub for G2 so far in this game. They go ahead and take Cassante on B4. You know, it's whatever, it's fine. Renekton's banned, so at least it's not Renekton. As a blind pick top laner, it's probably, you know, the most acceptable in the current meta that pro teams think is strong. It's probably not what I would pick. I would just go for Ornn or Malphite or something like that as a hyperscaling top laner. But Cassante is acceptable to say the least. And then Smolder on B5 going to flex into the mid lane, which is very nice. It's not like Zeri's ever going to have lethal pressure on the Smolder, so he gets a pretty free lane to scale. And Smolder obviously fits the rest of the team comp really well with hyperscaling, and really as soon as he hits that stack mark and the carries and the Ivern hits 2 to 3 items, G2's just going to auto win the game. GX doesn't really have a way to win this game. Their ADCs aren't going to be able to hit, and outside of them they have no damage. So really huge draft win for G2 in game 1. Let's go ahead and check out game 2. So here we are in the game 2 draft, and again G2 on blue side, first pick Ashe. This is fantastic. I'll say it again, Ashe is just a really solid champion. Great utility ADC, great damage ADC, and just a really good all-around champion. So I think that's, you know, as long as it works and as long as it's strong, which it is, good B1 for G2. The only thing I don't really like about, you know, the game 1 draft and in addition this draft is that Corki's gone through everything, all 10 bans and all 10 picks. He wasn't just completely ignored. So that's the only questionable thing from G2 is not picking Corki, but you know, it's acceptable. GX with a Misfortune and Rel. First rotation, again, the Rel is just going to be useless. When enemy team first picks Ashe, you can't pick Rel. You have to pick something that matches her range. You can't engage into that. Similar to a champion like Caitlyn or Kog'Maw. Engaged champions can work if you can get on top of them consistently, but Ashe is so long ranged, and she's probably going to have adequate protection that Rel isn't going to be able to reach her, and if she does, she's going to be too far away from the rest of her team to get a good follow-up. So the Rel is just bad, the MF is fine. G2 go in for second rotate rather, Maokai and Poppy. I like the Maokai a lot, you know, really strong tank jungler, much better than Sejuani, which had been coming through a lot earlier in the split, so Maokai's much better than her, which I appreciate. And then the Poppy as a blind pick top lane, actually I take that back, Poppy's going to be flexed into the support role for Mickey this game. So very, very nice with Braum banned from GX. This is probably the next best option, honestly. Can just completely counter the Rel engage and is good into the MF because MF is pretty immobile and Poppy plus Ashe can pretty effectively lock that down. So I really like the Poppy pick here as a flex to support, being able to completely destroy Rel in that lane, similar to the Braum. And then GX go ahead and round out first phase with Ornn. I think they were kind of fooled with the Poppy pick here, thinking that it was a blind Poppy top, and they wanted to trade tanks in the top lane. So Ornn is perfectly fine, but G2 can really easily counter that since the Poppy's actually going support most likely. If I were GX on B3, I would have just taken jungle counter. I'm not entirely sure why they didn't, unless it's some crazy Ornn jungle, but by the brand hover, I will assume it's not. So I don't know why they picked top lane blind pick on R3. It doesn't really make any sense. The brand could have just come in on R3 instead, and then you could have saved you know, top lane for counter pick on R5, but it is what it is. It's a pretty bottom tier team, so I'm not surprised that they're not drafting well. Either way, their draft is looking kind of okay with a pretty strong team fight in the late game. The only bad thing is the Rel. She's going to have only like 0 value inside of this game. And the MF really needs lockdown to be able to get effective, consistent effectiveness out of her ultimate. G2 go ahead and finish out with Yone and Corki. So like I said, the Poppy being flexed to support, and then the Yone coming in to counter the Ornn top lane is very, very nice. I like the Yone because Bork is a ridiculously strong item right now, and Yone is going to scale very, very well. Pretty much has a free lane to do so as well into the Ornn. And then the Corki, obviously, like I said at the beginning of the draft, how he had been ignored through pretty much a draft and a half, but with the Corki coming in there on B5 for G2, it's looking like a really, really solid draft. So I'd say another draft win for G2. Even though GX's comp is definitely better this game with more scaling teamfight elements, the Rel is just not going to do anything, and the Poppy is going to do something. So other than the support role, it's pretty even, but G2 definitely have the support advantage, so in that sense, I will give them the draft win in this game as well. Let's go ahead and jump over to Game 3. Alright, here we are in the Game 3 draft, and G2 go ahead and first pick Zeri this time because GX banned the Ashe away. So Zeri is perfectly fine, really, really strong champion. The only thing I don't like about it is that it's short range. But then again, it is Zeri, and she's, well, Zeri. So I guess in terms of short range ADCs, she's probably the best one because, you know, she has ridiculous move speed and kiting ability. GX go ahead and first rotate Kai'Sa and Maokai. The Kai'Sa I just don't like at all. I think it's a really overrated champion and people don't build her AP, so it's not going to be super effective. The Maokai's fine as a blind pick, but the Kai'Sa is going to definitely struggle. I would have just picked Draven and matched that to wherever the Zeri went to match the flex potential there. G2 go ahead and second rotate Ivern and Rel. The Ivern's great to match the hyperscaling Zeri and be able to buff her up really, really well. The Rel, again, similar to the GX picks, just doesn't make any sense. You've already established a theme with Zeri and Ivern of scaling, teamfight, and kind of long-range kite back, and kind of just protecting your carry, and the Rel just completely counters that, and Rel can only go in. She can't do anything else. She can't peel, she can't kite back, she can't disengage, she only engages, she only goes in. And that's why I think this champion is bad, is because she only does one thing, and it's so easy to fail at that one thing. So that's why I don't like Rel, and it doesn't fit with the other two champions that G2 picks. So that's pretty weak on B3 for G2. And then Giant X go ahead and round out first phase with Rumble, Again, I don't know why they're blind picking top lane 2 games in a row for no reason. They can just counter pick support here. They can take something like the Braum or the Poppy like G2 did into Rel, and that would be perfectly fine. You could even take Nautilus to pair well with the Kai'Sa and do well into the Rel as well. So I don't really understand Giant X's blind pick top lane 2 games in a row, even though Rumble's strong. G2 can really just pick any scaling tank if they want, or actually counter the Rumble, which they probably won't do, but it just doesn't really make any sense to me. Giant X look like they're going to lock in support here, which they should. They're hovering a lot of different things. If I were them, I would just go ahead and take Braum. I think that's probably the strongest available champion. They're not lacking engage with the Maokai, but they go ahead and take the Rakan, which is really interesting. I don't think the Rakan's a great pick here because Zeri is such high mobility and Rel kind of exists. So Rel can kind of just R the Rakan and he can't really do anything. In addition, with G2's round out of Galio and Trist, Trist can knock away the Rakan and Galio can hard CC everyone there. So Rakan's not going to get a lot of value this game, and I don't think Kai'Sa is either because she's very short ranged and she can't really kite, I don't think, against this level of CC from the Galio and the Rel. I really like the Galio pick as a counter into the Rumble. Even though it's not a super hard counter, the Galio with that magic damage shield and the level of CC that he has is really effective. I also think that his wave clear is solid. Once he gets a couple points in the queue, combined with his passive, he's going to be able to survive the lane pretty well into Rumble, I think. And he's going to offer a lot of team fight value, assuming he goes tank. With Aftershock, he's going to offer a lot of teamfight value with his CC as well. So I really like G2's draft. Again, it scales really well. It's pretty much basic front to back with the Ivern there to buff up the hyper carries. I really like this. Even though Smolder came in on R5, I just think the Rumble's not going to do a whole lot, and the Rakan is just super random. I also think that Kai'Sa is just a pretty weak champion compared to other hyperscaling ADCs. So 3 games in a row, Giant X showed their bottom tier in the LAC for a reason. With pretty weak drafts 3 games in a row. But G2 drafted solid 3 games in a row, I think. Big draft wins across the board, and it showed throughout the game. Even though, again, G2 should have won this series 3-0 against a weaker opponent, I think this was a really important bounce back series for them, and it showed their potential as a team and their mental resilience, I might add. So I'm excited to see if they can keep it together through the rest of the season finals and go on a bit of a run heading into Worlds. Thanks for watching. See you next time.